This is basically one of the highlights of what I do. Hello everyone and welcome back to Prestige Reef. I've got a few updates for you today, but I thought rather than showing you things, a bit at a time, I'm going to do it in real time with you, because videos take a long time to make and edit, and I have got plenty to do. In today's video, what I'm going to show you is we're going to put the first coral in this system. Now, despite the fact that I dipped the coral going into that system, it's going to be dipped again to go into this system. And the other thing that you might notice in this video, this glass has got like a very thin film over it, and I could just clean it off with an algae scraper, but I'm not going to, because I've only got one algae scraper at the moment, which is this one, and nothing in this system will ever touch this system, and nothing in this system will ever touch this system other than the coral. So it's entirely different turkey bases for feeding. It will be different cups and containers. Everything will be different, because I don't want any cross-contamination, just in case there is a possibility that if something gets into one system, I don't want it to get into both systems, if you see what I mean. So let me take you back to where I dipped the corals. Right, so the first thing you need to do is prepare the dip. Now, before, we have used this tap. This tap goes to system 1. We have never used this tap before. This tap goes to system 2. Now, it's always difficult to try to do this while filming. But so this water is the water that's coming out of system 2. Oh, a little bit of waste. So that water has come out of this tank. So what we need to do, we need to make sure we got the right amount in, which we do. We need to put in the correct amount of dip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Put that back there. Now, the thing I do want to let you know is a lot of people think that YouTubers get given all the products. Well, the products you see in this video, I bought. So I've been using Coral RX for years. I'm going to show you how I feed the corals in a minute. So, so while the coral's dipping, it's a bit early to feed them, if I'm honest, but I thought I'd show you. So put that in there, right? And there is the second one. So what we need to do from here is we need to go and get our first coral. Now, the coral that I'm going to get for this, the first coral that's going to be in that system is actually the exact same first coral, literally, not the same type, literally the same frag, the way into this system. Now, I believe, if I remember correctly, the very, very first piece was one of these tan frog spawns. Now, I know that I only have one, I believe, in there that has 2 heads, which means, and I'm pretty sure it's this one. So this, is it this one? Oh, it's now got more than 2 heads. So this is the very, very first coral that went into this system. I believe at first it only had 1 head. I can't quite remember. I think it was 1 head splitting into 2. And as you can see, it's grown quite considerably since then. So what I will do is I'm going to dip this coral, just checking it to see, make sure anything that shouldn't be on there. Those are just like the usual little white bits that you get on the glass sometimes. But the reason I kept this one is because I could see that it was still growing a few additional heads. So and you can see it's done really well actually. So right, so what we need to do, I need to take this. Need to let it close up a little bit. Oh no, it still has just 2 heads. Just looks massive. So we need to take this and go put it in our coral dip. So that's the first thing we need to do. Right, so we need to leave that for 15 minutes. Then while I'm leaving that, I'm going to go show you how I feed the corals. Right, so this is basically everything that I use to feed the corals. We've got Benny Pets, which you can see I've already mixed up earlier there for you. This is obviously for the fish, but in some extent the corals also get these, so some of the bigger LPS get these. This is what I mean when I say YouTubers do pay for stuff. You can see that the prices are on some, if not most, maybe not, but they're on those ones. Yeah, so this video is definitely not sponsored. So anyway, so we've got Benny Pets, which I've started to use recently, and I actually really like, because I like how fine it is. The powder is so fine. And then, as I said, this is for the fish, but some of the larger LPS corals will eat it as well, so the fungias and Duncan's corals. This I feed to the fish because it basically, it breaks down over the course of the whole day, so I quite often put that into the LPS tank, because then obviously they have a continuous supply throughout the whole day. And then this is an interesting one. This is basically dosing nitrate. Even after 14 years, this hobby can still basically kick your butt. And the biggest issue that I've had with this system is 100% down to nutrients. Now, most people don't struggle with nutrients because what they do is they cycle the tank, and then at the end of the cycle, there's already fish in the tank, and there's already nitrates and phosphates in the tank. This one was obviously cycled slightly differently, where I didn't have fish in the tank, and there's not any fish in that tank either, first, and that meant that the corals had no phosphate and nitrate, or very little. And even when I was feeding them, it still wasn't enough, so I actually started dosing it. And since I've started dosing it, I've got the nitrate to 2.5, well, it's between 2.5 and 5. Things are looking so much better. They're doing a lot better than they've done in a long time. Before I show you actually feeding the coral though, and what I do, I'll probably show you some of the corals, because I know as soon as I put Red Sea's Reef Energy in, it will turn the tanks green. So, and that'll be harder to film. So I'll show you some of the corals that came in last week and how they're doing. Right now, this tank is obviously mostly soft corals. You can see that the green star polyps are doing well, which is good, which again, they were one of the other corals which they started booming after I started dosing nitrate. But a lot of these mushrooms are mushrooms I literally just picked up from shops, or fellow reefers. As you can see, the jawbreakers there, and the kryptonite. And I'm actually growing them out. So these ones aren't, a lot of these aren't for sale at the moment, but they will be eventually once I can propagate them. That's a really pretty one. I really like that one. It's hard to see, but you can see there's two there. And then these were the mushrooms that you saw in the last video, and pretty much all of these sold instantly. So I think I've got one left, which is in that pot. It came loose. So yeah, so those are doing really well. I've got some other mushrooms over here, and then you won't have seen these before because these are new. But I've got two big tiles just full of random, all different mushrooms, and I had to stick down the fungia plate corals, because although that one's big enough to not get blown around in the flow, those ones were just being blown all over the place. So I just put a little dab of coral glue on the bottom, and that was enough. The green fungia at the back, which I know you can't see very well, is really strange. It lost. It looks like it's been stung. It was touched by that fungia, so I don't know why, because all the other fungia seem to be able to touch each other and there's no issues. But that one was touching that one, and then exactly where it was touched, you can see it's died. So I'm not sure why I only discovered that today. I've never experienced it before with fungias, because usually they're pretty peaceful. But yeah, for some reason that one is a menace. Right now, moving on to this tank. A lot of the stuff you would have seen previously. So these are the blastomusas you would have seen, Favias, and the Recordias. The Cephastrias they were fragged literally yesterday, or it might have been a day. Well, some of them were yesterday and some of them were the day before. Now, obviously, they need a little bit of time to heal. Cephastrias are a funny coral where, for whatever reason, they just don't like being touched that much. So, well, I suppose they probably don't like being cut in half. So that probably would do it. But obviously, once those have healed, which will probably be in 3-4 weeks, they'll be ready to go. But every single time I put Cephastrias in this system, although as I said, some of you, if you follow me on Instagram and Facebook, you'll have seen that this pink Cephastria I've had since November. So I tried to rest corals for a period of time before I actually before they get sold, rather than just importing them and shipping them out straight away. Because obviously at the moment I've got plenty of room, so there's no harm. The hammer spawn, although I was actually corrected, is which I believe are actually called frammers, although I actually think I prefer hammer spawn, is doing really well. So these are the ones that you saw me cut up in the last video. Now, the what's interesting about this is that these two pieces, so that purple bit and that green bit, are literally exactly, they're all from exactly the same colony. So how you can get two pieces which look so different from the same colony is actually quite interesting. And then what else have we got? We have got some Leptastria, which again that was originally came, I believe, from Europe in November. I've fragged up a lot of the war corals because a lot of people wanted smaller frags that were cheaper, so a lot of the war corals are now a lot cheaper, which is good. And then this was the final coral I wanted to show you. Now, this is a sun god Leptocerus, and this is the coral which tells me if the nutrients in the system are too low. Because if they're correct, it looks like that, and if it's not correct, it goes really, really pale. So, so a lot of us will have sort of like indicator corals in our systems where we look at them, and we know something's wrong. I know when it comes to KH, some of the euphyllias will be the first to start sulking if the KH isn't correct. But this is the coral that I keep an eye on all the time. It's always been in all of my tanks because I always know if there's an issue. And that's how I knew originally there was an issue with this tank with the nutrients being too low because it was just pale for so long. And a little update with regards to the fish. Winston, my yellow tang, which is now worth more than Bitcoin from what I hear, has obviously, as you can see, eaten some coral glue. Now he did this yesterday. Where has he gone? And he can still eat. So he can still eat pellets, and he doesn't appear to be. He's more distressed now with the fact that I'm filming him than he is with regards to the fact he's got a little bit of coral glue on his mouth. But I didn't want to stress him to pull it off, and even pulling it off could damage his mouth. So at the moment, all the time that he's eating and he doesn't appear stressed, I am going to leave it for the moment. And then the other fish update is the two dragon pipefish are doing well, which were named in the comment section. They have officially been called Drogon and Viserion, which are the names of the dragons from Game of Thrones. So one of the people in the comment section suggested that, and I thought it was a good name. So but yeah, they're doing really well, and they're actually far more interesting than when I first got them. And then two other things to show you very quickly is that the filter floss works so well. I'm over the moon that I've done that with this. And the other thing is that I've got the first sample of cladding. So obviously you can see it'll be full length, but it definitely finishes the room off. If you can imagine all the stands done in white, it will definitely make a big difference with regards to the aesthetics, and that's sort of like the last thing that I would like. Right, now on to the bit you've all been waiting for. Now, the corals usually get fed at night, so usually about 9 o'clock at night, or very first thing in the morning before the lights come on. Now I believe, although I'm sure there are some exceptions to this, corals usually feed at night, which is why I try to replicate that. So I'm not entirely sure how they will respond now. I'm sure some of them will respond, but others might not. But because it's not 9 o'clock at night, it's about 3 in the afternoon at the moment. So the first thing I do is AB+. Now I put this in because it spreads. You can see visually, and I'll show you in a second how quickly it spreads around all the system, and you can basically visibly see the corals responding usually to it. And that's basically it's like their wake up call. I tell them, look, food's coming, get ready. So that's what I use for that. So that's the first thing I'll put in. Right, now, if you haven't seen Red Sea's AB+ before, it basically is a essentially radioactive formula, and you'll see what I mean when I put the food in. That it basically turns the tanks green, which is why I gave you a little coral update first. So what I do is I put a little bit in each of the systems just to get the as I said, essentially to wake the corals up so that they know that food's coming. So I usually put that in, and then after about 10-15 minutes I'll then start with the rest of it. But before I put in the rest of the coral food, I feed the fish. Now, with the exception of the pipefish, all fish in these systems have to eat pellet food, because when I go on holiday, I don't want to be sort of held hostage by this system. Because and I want it to be basically easy for whoever looks after the tank, or even just put an auto feeder on. So the fish get fed quite a lot. You can see there's quite a lot of pellets. Some of those pellets will go to the fungias, and also some of the bounce mushrooms and even some of the Redactus mushrooms will eat them. So that tank usually gets the most because it's for it's the soft corals. Right now, you're just starting to see the first effects of the food going in the tank. So as you can see, some of the mushrooms are starting to close. So these ones have, you can see this one's starting to curl up as well. It's not unusual for the big one at the back to curl up, and also the furry green mushroom here to curl up as well. But as I said, it's a bit early for them, so they probably, I don't know if they're not noticing that it's feeding time. You can see the fungi has caught something, although I think that's a bit of fish waste. And you can see here, look, if you look very closely, the food actually moves really quite quickly up the fungia and into the mouth. So, as I said, although it looks like I put a lot of food in these systems, I really struggle to get any form of phosphate. Well, I have some phosphate, but basically no nitrate. So nitrate's the big issue for me. You can see that the fish definitely enjoy themselves, and they're all very fat. Right now, this is a good example of why I put the AB Plus in first. Now, a minute ago, none of the war corals had any of their polyps out, but as you can see, they've started to stick them out. Now, if I just put the coral food in, the powdered coral food in, there's a possibility that it will be quite quickly taken out of the system by the protein skimmer and the filter sock. Whereas, obviously, because the AB Plus is a liquid, it obviously goes through the filter sock. So it gives the corals more of a chance to get ready before there's another one. Before I start putting in the powdered food, which they can obviously then grab. And then the final part of the process is just using a turkey baster to go around and I spend quite a lot of time doing this sometimes. Sometimes I literally just pour in the flow if I'm very short time. But I quite enjoy watching. This is basically one of the highlights of what I do. Feeding the corals and just watching them close up. And basically any corals which are maybe if they're not doing as well or have recently been fragged, they get sort of a little bit of extra attention. And yeah. So and I will go around and do this to pretty much all of them. They get 6 teaspoons. They get 6 little spoons of the coral food every single day, which, just said, for a lot of people probably sounds excessive, but obviously I've got quite a lot of corals in here. So, and just and that's basically it. And then finally, taking you back to the frog spawn frag, as you can see, it's interesting because quite often people send me messages saying that they've never had a coral which is so clean when they dipped it. And obviously the system's relatively new, so I'm not surprised. But being able to see that myself, the only thing that you will see, which you didn't see on camera, these little white bits, I actually scraped off some of these bits. But yeah, so the last thing I'll do is I'll cut this off the plug, because no plugs ever transfer systems, which I'll do now, and then it'll be ready to go straight in. And then we've finally got system 2 with coral in it. Right now, as you can see, I've taken off the old plug and I have put a new plug on. It's just a precaution. I do it with all corals, whether they're from other people's tanks or from the ocean or anything. If the ocean ones have come on plugs, they don't always come on plugs. But yeah, so this coral is like a little pioneer, because it has been the first coral in both systems. So the only thing I will do now is I'm going to put some nitrate in the system and some phosphate in the system, just so it's got at least something. And yeah, that's it. So there's another huge milestone for us. We have now got System 2 fully up and running with coral in it. Right, that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed watching my video. Please feel free to comment below if you have any questions. If you did enjoy it, why not click that like and subscribe button? It makes a massive difference for YouTube's algorithm. And if you didn't like it, click the dislike button, because that also helps. And the other thing that helps is obviously all the people that support the channel on Patreon. And I know many of you have signed up recently and you're enjoying the benefit of having early access to corals. So, so yeah, have a good week, and I will see you next time.